Hello, this video is for Unit 2 Functional Anatomy, and we are looking at topics within the muscular system. Specifically in this video, we're going to be looking at E1 muscle types. Now, within that section, there are a couple of different factors. Specifically, we're going to be looking at 3 types of muscle tissue. As you can see from the specification here, I've kind of merged E1 and E2. We're going to look in this video at these 3 types of muscle tissue and their characteristics, but also in a later video we'll look at the 3 types of different skeletal muscle tissues, and then we'll look at the anatomy of skeletal tissue or skeletal muscle, and we will look at the 3 layers of connective tissue. So there's similar related topics, all 3, 3 and 3, something to help you maybe remember. 3 types of muscle tissue, 3 types of muscle fiber, and 3 names of the layers of skeletal muscle connective tissue. So as I said, we need to learn about 3 types of muscle tissue, and this is what they look like, and you can possibly see, even without knowing which is which, that there are some similar characteristics. Some look a bit stripy, the first one and the last one. This one looks different. They've all got these blobs, these nuclei. And what we need to understand for each of these 3 types is how they're structured and what function they have for us. Where are they located and what job do they do? Because anatomy is always about structure and function. The first type on the left, so this is cardiac muscle tissue. And I'll give you some detailed information in a moment about that. But you only find cardiac muscle tissue in the walls of the heart chambers. So this cardiac, kind of by the name, you could guess that. Cardiac muscle tissue, very specialized muscle tissue, only found in the walls of the heart. And you can see that the fibers are kind of all interconnected or intercalated. That means that if an impulse spreads along in these muscle fibers or along these muscle fibers, it will spread between them all very effectively and very efficiently, which we want. We want the chambers of our heart to contract together. So cardiac muscle tissue only located in the walls of our heart, and I would call this the wall of your heart the myocardium. Myo meaning muscle, and obviously cardiac means heart. So the myocardium is the muscular wall of the heart chambers, which is made up of cardiac muscle tissue. The second type of muscle tissue is this middle one here, and you know, perhaps you would sense that these cells look kind of smooth. They're different, they're smooth muscle tissue. And generally speaking, smooth muscle tissue is found in the walls of, or around the walls of, vessels or tubes inside our body. So we've got 2 examples here of tubes inside our body, hollow tubes. We've got a blood vessel. So this vessel actually is called an arteriole. It's somewhere between an artery and a capillary. So this arteriole has smooth muscle fibers wrapped around the outside of it. And this is an incredibly relevant example for you, and I want you to hold on to this example. Arterioles have smooth muscle fiber in their walls, and these fibers, these smooth muscle, can contract and narrow the blood vessel, which we call vasoconstriction, or the smooth muscle cells can relax and the vessel will widen, we call vasodilation, widening of that tube. And that influences where blood goes. If we want to reduce blood flow, vasoconstriction happens, this smooth muscle will contract. If we want to allow blood flow, this muscle will relax and it allows easier blood flow through the vessel. So that's the most important example of smooth muscle tissue. Down here we've got our intestines, our digestive system, and there is smooth muscle in the walls of our digestive system because we gradually squeeze squeeze food through our tubes. This is called peristalsis, the almost like wave of contraction to squeeze blood down through our colon. So we've got cardiac muscle tissue found only in the walls of our heart chambers, and we've got smooth muscle tissue only found around or in the walls of the hollow tubes of our body, blood vessels or our digestive tract, which leaves us this on the right then, this stripy or striated looking muscle fiber. This is a muscle fiber, this is a muscle fiber, and so on. This is called skeletal muscle fiber, and this is obviously an incredibly relevant fiber tissue type for us, because our skeletal muscle tissues help us make our muscles contract to perform the sports that we take part in. So again, all of your skeletal muscles, i.e. the muscles on or attached to your skeleton, skeletal muscle tissue, is found in our skeletal muscles. So these bigger muscles, your biceps brachii, your triceps brachii, your rectus femoris, your big quadricep muscle, these are all made up of skeletal muscle tissue. So we've got cardiac tissue, smooth muscle tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, the three types of muscle tissue. Now I'm going to show you a table which gives the characteristics of each of those three types in a little bit more detail. So you can obviously, once I've gone through these, pause the video and take them in more, digest it more clearly. But just to give you an overview, these are the sorts of bits of information you might need to know about each of those three tissue types. Where they're found, what's the example, what's their main role, what do they do, how do they help us, what do they look like or how are they structured, how are they controlled. Remember, these are all types of muscle tissue. What nervous system controls them? Do they contract slowly or quickly or both? And do they get tired? Do they fatigue? So let's look at cardiac muscle tissue first. We already know it's only found in the walls of the heart, and we call this the myocardium. Again, the example is only going to be the muscular walls of the heart chambers. Our two top chambers of our heart, the atria, have quite thin muscular walls, so less cardiac tissue, and the ventricles have thicker myocardium, thicker muscle tissue, because of the jobs they do, ejecting blood either to the lungs or to the body. And our left ventricle is thicker, has more cardiac fiber cells, because it has to eject blood out all over the body. And the contraction, the wave of contraction of all this cardiac muscle tissue is controlled by the heart, or our bodies, or the heart's pacemaker. There's a proper name for that called the sinoatrial node. We'll learn more about that in the CV system. But just know it sits in the wall of your right atrium, and it coordinates the contraction of the heart chambers and the contraction of the cardiac muscle fibers. We would describe the cardiac tissue as being intercalated, so linked to each other and striated, stripy, looking under a microscope. Now, we don't typically voluntarily control our heart rate, how these fibers contract. Our heart rate, and ejecting blood around our body every moment it does it, is controlled automatically for us by our autonomic nervous system. So it's kind of an involuntary, unconscious control. We don't tell our heart to contract now and now and now, it just does it. So we would describe it as being controlled involuntarily or unconsciously. But there is a special type of nervous system called the autonomic nervous system that does that for you. Also, of course, hormones like adrenaline can influence how fast your heart beats. If you're nervous to play a football match or a netball match, or excited about some kind of competition, and your heart might be racing, that's most likely adrenaline getting you ready for it, preparing you for it. How fast does the cardiac muscle tissue contract? Well, typically it contracts quite slowly. We want it to have a slow and steady beat and keep going forever and ever and ever. But obviously when we do exercise, it can increase quite dramatically up to, relatively quite high 100 and something beats per minute. Resting is probably somewhere around about 70 beats per minute. Does cardiac tissue typically get tired? No. As long as it has oxygen from the little coronary blood vessels that give it oxygen, it will keep contracting for us. But it must have a supply of oxygen. And if it doesn't get that might lead to something called angina, or possibly a heart attack where cardiac tissue doesn't get oxygen. So there's cardiac fiber or cardiac muscle tissue in a summary. Next, let's look at the smooth muscle tissue. Okay, so smooth muscle tissue is only found really in the walls of the hollow tubes of our body. And I gave you examples previously of blood vessels like the arterioles, and of the digestive system tract, so the intestines, to squeeze food down. Examples then being arterial and intestinal walls, And if you remember, I described vasoconstriction, where that smooth muscle will contract and narrow the blood vessel diameter, reducing blood flow, or the smooth muscle will relax, and we call that vasodilation, where it widens the blood vessel diameter and blood flows more easily through. That's really important for controlling levels of blood pressure, and also for what we call the vascular shunt, sending blood to one place or another in our body, or restricting blood flow. For example, in exercise, we send more blood to our working muscles and we send less blood to our digestive system. At rest, it's the opposite. And these arterioles and the smooth muscle contracting or relaxing helps control where that blood is distributed. So the job in these examples of the smooth muscle is when they contract, they squeeze fluid like blood or solids like food through the hollow tubes of our body. What do they look like? Well, they've got a kind of spindle shape. It's not stripy, so cardiac and skeletal muscle tissue is stripy, but this looks like, we would describe it as spindle-like, almost like smooth diamonds, if you remember. Do we consciously control this happening in our body? No. So again, these fibers are controlled unconsciously, or it's involuntarily, they will involuntarily contract or relax. We don't consciously do it. Again, it's our autonomic nervous system that takes care of all of that for us. Typical contraction speed is slow, and again, these fibers do not fatigue. So we've done cardiac, smooth, and finally, and importantly for us, let's look at skeletal muscle tissue. So where do we find skeletal muscle tissue? Well, skeletal muscle tissue makes up our muscles that are attached to our skeleton, our bones. Hence, they're called skeletal muscle tissue. Any muscle example is true, so our deltoids, biceps brachii, quadriceps, rectus femoris, all skeletal muscles made up of skeletal muscle tissue. Primarily, we use these types of tissue, this skeletal tissue, to contract to allow us to move, because our muscles, when they contract, they shorten, they apply a force via our tendons onto our bones. Our bones act as levers, and at a joint we allow movement. But also, in our muscles we store glycogen, that's a carbohydrate fuel source. We've got muscles that constantly work a little bit to keep us upright and keep our posture, hold us in position. And also our muscles work almost involuntarily when we shiver to help us regulate our temperature. If we get cold, we shiver to try and warm us, because muscles produce heat as a waste product. So lots of different functions for us, but of course primarily movement. What do they look under a microscope? What do they look like under a microscope? They're stripy, they look striated, and that's because they've got two different kinds of myofilament. Again, we'll learn about this in a different video. The two different types of protein or myofilaments are called actin and myosin, and they look dark or light under a microscope, which makes it that stripy appearance. Do we consciously control, or can we consciously control our skeletal muscles? Yes, of course. If a ball's coming towards you, your brain consciously sends a nerve impulse to your muscles to innervate them. That means make them contract. And that's obviously a conscious thing, a voluntary thing. And we put our arms up and we catch the ball. So a combination of your brain sending an impulse down your spinal cord, and those two organs are the central nervous system, and then out along motor nerves to your muscles is the peripheral nervous system. We consciously control our skeletal muscle tissue. Do they contract quickly or slowly? Well, actually it depends. We've got, as we will learn about in the next video, we've got different types of muscle fiber that can contract quickly or slowly, quickly and powerfully, or slowly but over a long, long period of time. So it varies the speed of contraction. Do skeletal muscle tissue, or does skeletal muscle tissue get fatigued, tired? Yes, especially the type that is the fast twitch ones, the type 2 fibers. They can get fatigued. Type 1 don't tend to get as fatigued. So we've got a summary there of the 3 different types of muscle tissue. Just make sure you clarify the difference between types of muscle tissue and types of muscle fiber that we'll learn about next. Make sure also you've got some of the key characteristics for each. Where would we find these? Do we control them consciously or unconsciously? Do they fatigue or not? What's their role? Where would I find them? Examples of exam questions. Here's one. So this was a nice, easy, but 4 marker. So a nice, easy way to earn 4 marks. It's given you one of the muscle types, smooth muscle tissue, and it's told you that the characteristic is involuntary, and it wants you to fill in the other 2 types and a characteristic of them. And of course, these are the ones that you could have put. So it's cardiac, involuntary, myogenic. That means it can contract kind of on its own. It doesn't necessarily need a impulse from your brain to tell your cardiac tissue to contract. It can do it involuntarily itself. Skeletal muscle tissue, voluntary. We do make them contract, and it does get tired. So any one of those characteristics would have been accepting, or another relevant, appropriate response.